I just had 2.5 hour chat with a friend. She and I are unable to keep it below 2.5 hours. And I had actually the last segment of our conversation was about the book that I want to discuss with you. I've had this on my shelf since last year. It was nominated for a Booker. It's Perfection by Vincenzo Latronico. Last year, I saw a lot of reviews, although I felt like either Vincenzo has not been able to communicate very well the essence of the book, or meaning he's a bad writer, or the people who were engaged with reading of it don't understand the depth of the message of the novel. And I think it's the latter. Namely, just before the nomination, I listened to a podcast with Vincenzo, and I thought this book must be really good, so I ordered it and didn't pick it up until now, but now I have, and I have read it. So I have a lot of things to say about it. It's a very short book. It's 115 pages long. I highly recommend it. I think Vincenzo is a very good writer, and that people obviously either lack the ability to understand what he was trying precisely to communicate, or have seen themselves in some way while reading this novel and struggle to look themselves in the mirror, I guess, because that was a lot of the critique that I saw. Also, a lot of them were saying, like, oddly, I found myself in a lot of these experiences that the characters were having, but they weren't able to go beyond the surface level of their critique. And as you know, in my reviews, I will probably reveal some of the spoilers of the novel. So in case you haven't read it and you want to read it and don't want spoilers, maybe you shouldn't watch this review. Let's just start first by a short summary. The novel doesn't have a plot line. It's character focused, follows a young couple in Berlin who have migrated as young creatives to Berlin in their 20s. They come from a Mediterranean country. He doesn't say which one, but we can assume that it could be Italy because Vincenzo himself is Italian. And the novel is about their life in Berlin. That would be the main summary. The other summary that I would give that he explores also is that life has no meaning and we are all going to die eventually. That's it. That's my review. No, I'm joking. That's not my review. So we are already in the first pages, we are introduced to their life, not to the characters themselves, but to the life through the space that they inhabit. He has this very lengthy description of the apartment that they live, and based on the description of the apartment, we are supposed to grasp what kind of people we are being introduced to. And when I was reading this segment about the apartment, there were so many tiny details about the placement of certain things in the apartment that I thought, okay, this is so specific. He either is using his own apartment and maybe tweaking it a little bit to make a certain point. Maybe he knows people who live in this kind of apartment and he has spent a lot of time in apartments like this one that he's describing. Or there is a third option that I'm not aware of. And then slowly I became aware of the possibility that it could be that he was looking for an apartment in Facebook ads and that he saw photos of some apartment that was being sublet in Berlin and that he used it as an inspiration for a description. Now, why am I saying this? It's awfully specific detail, and already in the beginning, I'm focusing on this not so lengthy description of the apartment. It's because this is the basis that a lot of people focused on in the novel. But of course, this is just the superficial aspect of the novel. This is just a facade. So already through this description, we are able to understand that the couple that is the main character in the novel are very much preoccupied in their own presentation of the self to the outside world, to the third person observing. And the whole novel is written from this perspective, as if you are, as a reader, a third person observing them living in this space. So, like I said, there are young creatives, they work as graphic designers, and the whole novel is about them trying to find things that will give them pleasure in life. It's a very kind of, I would say, a workaholic novel, a novel that describes this culture of workaholism, because that's one of the things that they are focused on. They're trying to find pleasure in life through the work that they do. And this is something that is part of the neoliberal ideology, that you are supposed to derive the meaning of your existence from the work that you do. As a millennial couple, this is something that I've been fed as well. And I am, as a millennial myself, I am very much aware that this is something that I was indoctrinated in, and I could see that aspect. But at the same time, their position is conditioned by them being actual migrants. I'm not going to use word expat because we need to drop that. They are, of course, not migrants in the same way that someone from, I don't know, Africa is a migrant in Europe, or a migrant from other parts of the global south. But they are still migrants, nevertheless. And their position in the German society in Berlin is determined by the work they do, the languages they are able or not able to speak, and how well they are able to kind of grow roots in Germany based on that. Throughout the novel, we are also thrusted into the global political situation. We are also introduced from the character's perspective of the migrant crisis that occurred in the 2015-14. And they are trying also in some way to find meaning through engagement in this activist work, quote unquote activist. But everything that they are doing in this aspect doesn't seem to be enough for them, and they find it pointless, and they don't seem to be able to find the fulfillment that they're looking for. And this is also another layer in the novel, that whatever they are doing or they're deciding to do, they have a particular vision of how this should look like. And once it doesn't turn the way they expect it to be, they immediately drop it. At one point, there is also throughout the novel discussion about the precarious work conditions that they have as freelancers, although I disagree with how Latronico terms this. He has one specific sentence. I'm going to try and find it. Yes, he says, they are long days. Altogether, the working hours probably exceed those of an office worker. And yet, unlike in an office, here no one is counting hours, because in this, a life work plays an important role without being an obligation or burden. On the contrary, work is a source of growth and creative stimulation, a baseline to the tune of leisure. So I think this is a very important aspect, where he's actually discussing this culture of work ethics that exists in the neoliberal system, and how we are conditioned to believe that we are not, if we are not grinding 24/7, that we are really not doing any work at all. And I had recently this kind of conversation with a friend of mine, that I felt like I haven't done any kind of work this year, and that I'm just lazing around, and how even as a social scientist, as a political scientist, and I'm aware of this conditioning and the discourse and how ideology works in that perspective, that it's so easily for me to fall into that trap. Now, think of the average human who has not read the theoretical concepts and research on this topic, how easy it is for them also to fall into this trap and to justify the conditioning of having to grind every second of your existence. But there is a big distinction between myself and the characters in the book, and that is that they come from a very privileged position. They come from families that are financially well off, and they themselves know that whatever happens in their life, if they are unable to support themselves, that they have a safety net to fall back on. Now they have some kind of like push and pull relations with their families, because they are unable to understand why they choose to live this life in Berlin. But this is just, like, if this is your main problem, then I'm sorry, your life is full of privilege that you're not even able to tell your ass from a privilege that you are surrounded with and that you live in. And another aspect is that's actually the point of the novel, that they are so privileged that they don't see how they are contributing to the issues and the extent of the issues that they themselves are facing, and especially their friends who are also migrants in Berlin, which frequently have to go back to their home country because of either losing a job or just simply not being able to stay in the apartment where they are staying, and the prices are increasing. The landlord is giving you a short notice to vacate it, or whatever other reason. So their friends, in essence, don't have the safety nets for them to continue to face these challenges, economic challenges in Berlin, but rather they have to go back to their home country. And this is something that is present throughout the novel, this fear that they have that they will also become like their friends, that they will at one point have to go back home, because it will be unsustainable for them to live in Berlin. However, this does not occur simply because they are also individuals who come from a position of privilege, but they are also the ones creating these housing issues in Berlin. They are subletting their apartment for a ridiculous amount of money. They even themselves feel shame about it, but they have these mechanisms where they justify these decisions. Oh, they really worked hard, they need to go on a third vacation this year, so they can't afford the plane tickets, so this money will be used to sponsor 50% of their vacation time, 3 weeks on some Greek island. And it is here that you really stop feeling any kind of sympathy or empathy for them. You just start to see that they are actually just one of the cogs in the system, and that they are quite successfully aiding the system and maintaining it. And they, in some way, are aware of this, but they are unable to face it to the point to change anything. They live in such level of comfort that just the idea of challenging that comfort feels uncomfortable to them. So although on some level they might feel a little bit sorry about the position of privilege that they're in, and they might have some kind of guilty trip or shame attached to it, they just kind of push it down and choose consciously to not be engaged in facing themselves from the critical perspective. The end of the novel is kind of logical, and at the same time, it's very kind of funny. I feel that Vincenzo did a really good job in the evolutionary perspective of the character development and the story development that he did. But in essence, the character development is not really deep because they themselves are not very deep people. They don't have the depth to their character. They don't evolve at all. They just geographically move to a different place and they continue to behave in the same way. So, and I think this is very realistic. I believe that not all novels should provide this in-depth character development simply because it wouldn't be realistic that every human would change so much over time. There are people who maintain their core features for the rest of their lives, and they just simply choose not to change anything, and they simply choose not to face themselves, and in the way that they have created, especially if they have caused harm, they are choosing willingly not to face themselves in the mirror and to actually take responsibility and acknowledge that they are also part of the problem. So yes, I think Vincenzo is a brilliant writer. I highly recommend it. Please pick it up, read it. It's a very good study, socio-political study of our time. And I think you will have also fun along the way. So it's a good novel overall. Thank you for watching, and I hope you stick around for the videos that will be coming in the future. If you have any thoughts or you have read the novel, please do share it in the comments. I would really like to keep this discussion going in the comment section. Hope you have good Friday and good upcoming weekend. Bye.